In the middle of the junkyard, the alien girl sat on a pile of broken metal, her small hands holding tightly to a little toy. The toy was old, scratched, and weak, but it was the only thing she had left from her family. She held it to her chest as if it was a treasure. Around her, other children from different species played with shiny new gadgets, laughing and running. They looked at her and whispered. Some pointed, some laughed, but she ignored them. She kept her eyes on the small figure in her hands. Her toy was shaped like a small animal, one from her home world, with tiny wings and a soft glow inside. The glow had been fading for months, but she still kept it safe. When she pressed the button on its back, sometimes it made a soft sound, like a lullaby. That sound was her comfort in the lonely nights. But as she pressed the button this time, nothing happened. She tried again. She shook it. She pressed harder. Still nothing. Her hands started to tremble. "No, not now," she whispered. She tried to adjust its small wing, but the joint was weak. A crack snapped through the air. One of the wings fell off. Her heart dropped with it. She gasped and quickly picked it up, but the toy's light flickered once, then completely died. Tears filled her large eyes. The laughter of the others grew louder. "Look at her! Even her toy is broken," one of them shouted. Another said, "She cries for junk!" Their voices stabbed her heart. She hugged the broken toy against her chest, her tears dripping down onto the lifeless little figure. She wanted to scream at them, but no words came. She only felt the ache of losing something too precious to lose. For her, the toy was not just a plaything. It was her last memory of her parents. They had given it to her before they disappeared. When she held it, she felt they were near. Now that it was broken, it felt like they were gone forever. She closed her eyes tightly, wishing someone would help her, but she knew no one would. No one cared. She was just the strange girl in the junkyard, too weak, too different, too unwanted. But then, a shadow moved near her. She opened her eyes and saw a figure kneel beside her. It was not another child. It was a man, human, with worn clothes covered in oil stains, his hands strong and rough from hard work. His face was tired, but his eyes were kind. He did not laugh like the others. He did not whisper behind her back. He simply looked at the broken toy in her hands. He reached out slowly, not to grab it, but to ask. "May I see it?" he said softly. His voice was calm, almost gentle, as if he understood what the toy meant to her. She clutched it tighter, unsure if she should trust him. What if he broke it more? What if he took it away? She shook her head quickly, but he did not move closer. He only waited, patient, as if he had all the time in the world. The other children had gone silent, watching the strange scene. Some smirked, waiting for the human to fail. Humans were not respected in this place. They were seen as weak, slow, useless with alien technology. The girl knew this too. Still, there was something different in his eyes. Not pity, not mockery, something else. Her hands trembled again as she looked down at the broken toy. It was no use keeping it close if it would never glow again. With a shaky breath, she extended her arms, slowly placing it in his hands. Her voice was almost a whisper. "Please, fix it." The mechanic looked at the toy carefully. His rough fingers moved with surprising care, as if he were touching something fragile, like glass. He turned it over, studied the wing, pressed the button gently. His brows pulled together, and for a moment, he said nothing. The girl watched his every move, her heart pounding. Finally, he looked at her and gave a small nod. "I can try," he said. His words were simple, but they carried weight. No one had ever said they would try for her before. She blinked, wiping her tears quickly with the back of her hand. The other children began to whisper again. "He can't fix that," one said. "Humans don't know alien machines," another added. Their words made her chest tighten with fear. What if they were right? What if he failed and the toy was lost forever? But when she looked back at the man, she saw determination in his eyes. He pulled a small tool from his belt, one she had never seen before. It was old, scratched, but it looked like it had been used many times. He adjusted the toy's broken wing, then carefully opened its back. Tiny sparks flickered inside as he worked. His hands moved fast, steady, with a rhythm that showed he had done this kind of thing many times. The girl leaned forward, holding her breath. Her tears had stopped, but her heart was still racing. The toy was in his hands now. All she could do was watch and hope. Around them, the junkyard grew quiet. Even the children who mocked her now stared with wide eyes. They wanted to see if the human would fail. Minutes felt like hours. The sound of his tool clicking and humming was the only thing breaking the silence. The girl's small hands twisted nervously in her lap. She wanted to ask if it was working, but she was too afraid to interrupt. Finally, the mechanic lifted his head slightly, his lips pressing into a line of focus. He made one last adjustment, then closed the toys back gently. He placed the wing carefully where it belonged and locked it into place. He blew softly on the sparks of smoke rising from the joints. Then he held the toy in both hands, looked at her, and gave a small smile. "Let's see if it still remembers," he whispered, and pressed the button. The girl's heart stopped. For a moment, nothing happened. The toy lay still, silent, lifeless. Her chest tightened with despair. Tears returned to her eyes. But then, a faint glow flickered inside the toy's chest. Weak at first, but there. A soft sound followed, the beginning of the lullaby she thought she had lost forever. Her lips parted, and she gasped loudly. The glow grew stronger, lighting up the toy's body. The tiny wing moved slightly, not perfectly, but enough to show it was alive again. She covered her mouth with her hands, tears spilling once more, but this time they were not of sadness. The man smiled at her reaction, his tired face softening. He placed the toy gently back into her hands. "It's not perfect," he said, "but it still works." The girl hugged the toy tightly, listening to its song, the glow reflecting in her wet eyes. She looked at the human mechanic and whispered, "Thank you." Around them, the other children were silent, unable to laugh anymore. They had seen something they never expected. A human had done what they believed impossible. The girl did not care about their silence. For the first time, she did not feel alone. The workshop was small and dark, filled with the smell of oil, smoke, and old wires. The human mechanic sat at his table with the broken toy in front of him. The alien girl sat on a stool nearby, her wide eyes following every move he made. The little glow from the toy had faded again, and now it looked like a lifeless shell. But the man was not ready to give up. He rolled up his sleeves, revealing arms marked with burns and scars from years of hard work. He picked up a strange tool, old and scratched, but it looked like it had been part of his life for many years. He adjusted a small lens over his eye and leaned closer to the toy. Tiny sparks flashed as he touched its inner parts, and the girl gasped softly. She clutched her hands together, afraid that one wrong move would destroy the toy forever. The mechanic did not look up. His hands moved carefully, steady as if he could see every hidden secret inside the little machine. Outside the workshop, the junkyard was noisy. Metal clanged, voices shouted, and engines roared. Rumors were already spreading fast. Some said the human was wasting his time. Others laughed and claimed the girl was foolish to trust him. They said humans could never fix alien machines. But inside the workshop, it was only the hum of his tools and the faint sound of his slow breathing. The girl could not stay quiet. "Will it work again?" she asked in a small voice. The mechanic did not answer at once. He adjusted another piece, tightened a screw, then finally said, "Machines always have a voice. You just have to listen." His tone was calm, but his eyes stayed sharp with focus. The girl tilted her head, confused by his words. To her, the toy was not just wires and light. It was alive with memories of her parents. But when he spoke about machines as if they were living, something inside her wanted to believe him. She hugged her knees and leaned closer, watching the glow of sparks light up his hands. Hours passed like minutes. His fingers worked fast, his tools clicking and buzzing. Sometimes the toy flickered with light, only to go dark again. Each time it went out, the girl's heart sank, but the man never frowned. He wiped the sweat from his forehead and kept going, as if failure was not even a question. At one point, a loud crack burst from the toy, and smoke rose into the air. The girl jumped from her stool, her eyes wide with fear. "It's broken," she cried, but the mechanic calmly waved the smoke away with his hand. "Not broken, talking," he said. "It tells me where it hurts." His hands moved quickly to adjust another wire. His calmness surprised her. Everyone else gave up on her, laughed at her, called her weak. But this man did not laugh. He spoke to the toy as if it was a friend. The workshop door creaked open. 2 alien boys peeked inside, smirking. "Is it fixed yet, human?" one sneered. "Maybe you'll make it worse." The girl's face turned red with shame, but before she could shout at them, the mechanic looked up just once. His stare was steady, not angry, but strong enough to silence them. The boys exchanged glances, muttered something, and left. The girl blinked in surprise. She had never seen anyone shut them up so easily without a single word. She whispered, "Why do you help me?" The man paused for a moment, his tool resting in his hand. He looked at her briefly, then back at the toy. "Because no one else will." His answer was simple, but it sank deep into her heart. The room fell into silence again, broken only by the faint buzzing of his tool. The girl leaned forward, her chin resting on her knees, watching the man fight against failure again and again. Each spark, each turn of the screw was like a battle. She felt every moment as if it were her own. Midnight came. The junkyard outside grew quiet, only the sound of distant winds carrying through broken ships and piles of rust. Inside the workshop, a single lamp glowed above them. The mechanic's hands moved slower now, heavy with exhaustion, but his eyes still burned with determination. He had been working for hours, and yet he did not stop. The girl's eyes grew heavy, but she refused to sleep. She wanted to be there when the toy came alive again. She wanted to see it with her own eyes. She hugged herself against the cold air and whispered, "Don't stop." The mechanic gave a tired smile. "I won't." He made another adjustment, connecting two small wires. A sudden surge of blue light flashed, and the toy glowed faintly for a second before fading. The girl gasped again, her eyes wide with hope. "It worked," she shouted, but the mechanic shook his head gently. "Not yet. It's breathing, but not alive." Her shoulders slumped, but she could not look away. She felt something she had never felt before. Hope mixed with fear. Every moment was torture, yet every spark pulled her closer to believing. Hours stretched longer. Sweat rolled down his face, his hands black with oil. He spoke to himself sometimes, muttering words she did not understand, but his voice was steady. He never cursed the toy, never cursed her, never said it was impossible. That alone made him different from anyone she had known. Finally, he leaned back in his chair, exhaling deeply. The toy sat in front of him, its broken wing repaired, its body glowing faintly like a heartbeat. He touched the button once, and the toy's eyes lit up, dim but alive. The girl shot to her feet, nearly tripping over the stool. She clapped her hands over her mouth to stop her scream of joy. But just as quickly as the light appeared, it faded again. The toy went dark. Her eyes filled with tears once more, her chest aching. "It's gone again," she whispered. The mechanic rubbed his tired eyes. His voice was rough but calm. "Not gone, not yet, it's fighting." The girl hugged herself, staring at the toy as if willing it to wake. She wanted to cry, but his words kept her still. Fighting. The toy was fighting, just like her, just like him. He stood, stretched his aching back, and picked up the toy again. His shadow stretched across the workshop wall. "Tomorrow," he said, "we try again." The girl nodded slowly, clutching her knees. She had never trusted anyone before, but now she believed him. She believed that somehow, against all odds, the human mechanic would bring her toy back to life. And for the first time, she dared to believe she was not alone in her fight. The morning sun crept slowly into the junkyard, its light slipping through the gaps of broken ships and piles of scrap. The girl sat on the edge of the workbench, her eyes red from staying awake the whole night. She had not dared to sleep. Her toy rested on the table in front of her, still lifeless, but her hope had not died. The human mechanic entered with a cup of water in his hand, his steps heavy but steady. His eyes were tired, yet his face carried the same calmness as before. Without saying much, he sat down, picked up his tools, and began again. The girl leaned closer, her heart pounding with every sound of his work. This time, his hands moved with more confidence. He had studied the toy long enough. He seemed to know where its secrets lay hidden. He touched the wires gently, adjusted the wing, and replaced a small coil with one he had found in the piles of junk. The girl held her breath when he pressed the button. For a second, nothing happened. Then, a faint hum filled the air. The toy's eyes glowed weakly, flickering like the first spark of dawn. The girl gasped and reached for it, but he held it steady in his hands. "Wait," he whispered. "It's fragile." The hum grew louder, the glow steadier. The small wings trembled and gave a tiny shake. Then a sound rose, a soft tune, broken but still there. It was the lullaby. The girl's lips parted in shock. Tears welled in her eyes. The sound filled the workshop, and she felt her chest tighten with joy. She had thought she would never hear that song again. Yet now it wrapped around her heart like a warm blanket. She grabbed the toy when he finally placed it in her hands. She pressed it close to her chest, her tears falling freely, but this time they were not tears of sadness. She looked at him, her voice trembling. "You did it." The mechanic only smiled faintly. "Not me," he said. "It wanted to live again." Her small laugh broke through her tears. For the first time, she smiled at him, truly smiled. Her face lit up, and for a moment, the junkyard felt less cold. She whispered, "Thank you," her voice shaking with emotion. Outside the workshop, the sound had drawn attention. Other children gathered near the door, peeking in. Their eyes widened when they saw the toy glowing again in her hands. Whispers spread quickly. "It's working?" one of them muttered. "But how? He's just a human." The girl hugged the toy tightly, ignoring their whispers. For her, only the song mattered, but she noticed the silence in their voices. No more laughter. No more cruel words. They were watching with something else in their eyes. Confusion. Maybe even envy. The mechanic leaned back in his chair, wiping sweat from his brow. His hands trembled slightly from hours of work, but his eyes remained calm. The girl studied him closely. She had never seen anyone fight so hard for something that was not even theirs. He could have walked away, ignored her, laughed like the others. But he did not. He had stayed, worked through the night, and given her back the only piece of her family she had left. She looked down at the toy again, the small glow reflecting in her tears. She whispered to herself, "He fixed more than this." She was not sure if he heard her, but he looked at her once and gave a small nod, as if he understood. The bond between them had formed silently, through hours of sparks, sweat, and broken parts. It was not just about a toy anymore. She felt something she had never felt before. Trust. She trusted him, the human mechanic, more than anyone she had ever known. The other children could not stay quiet. One of them stepped forward, frowning. "How did you do it?" he asked the mechanic. His tone was not mocking this time, but almost curious. The mechanic shrugged lightly. "Machines are machines. You just listen." The boy scoffed, but he had no answer. The others remained silent, their eyes fixed on the glowing toy. They could not believe what they were seeing. A human, weak in their eyes, had done what no one thought possible. The girl turned toward them, holding the toy proudly against her chest. For the first time, she did not feel small or worthless. She felt seen. She looked at the mechanic again and gave a shy smile. Later, when the crowd had faded, the girl stayed close to him. She asked softly, "Why does it matter to you? You don't even know me." He paused, his hand resting on the table. He thought for a moment before replying, "Because everyone needs something worth fixing." His voice was rough, but his words were clear. She blinked, her chest tightening again. She looked at the toy, then at him. His words echoed inside her head. Something worth fixing. No one had ever said that about her, not even about her toy. She felt warmth spread in her heart. That night, as the toy hummed quietly beside her, she lay down in a corner of the workshop instead of the cold junkyard ground. The mechanic worked on another broken piece of scrap, his hands steady, his face calm. The sound of his tools was like a lullaby to her now. She closed her eyes slowly, the toy glowing softly in her arms. For the first time in years, she did not cry herself to sleep. She drifted off with a smile, knowing she was not alone anymore. When she woke in the middle of the night, she found him still at the table, working on something else. The lamp above flickered, casting shadows across his tired face. She whispered, almost to herself, "He fixed me too." The toy pulsed with light as if it agreed. And in that moment, the girl realized something she could not explain. Her life had changed forever because one human had knelt beside her and refused to let her hope die. The toy sat glowing faintly in the girl's hands, its little body humming with a strange energy. She smiled at it, her small fingers tracing its smooth surface. But then, something new happened. Strange lines began to appear along the toy's back, like symbols slowly burning their way to the surface. The glow pulsed brighter, and the lullaby changed into a deeper sound, almost like a voice hidden under the music. The girl's smile faded. Her heart began to pound. She had never seen the toy do this before. She looked up at the mechanic with wide eyes, her lips trembling. "It's different," she whispered. The man leaned closer, his brow furrowing. He touched the toy gently, turning it in his rough hands. The glowing symbols spread, forming patterns he did not recognize. He knew machines, he knew wires, circuits, gears, But this was not normal engineering. This was something ancient, something powerful. The girl pulled the toy back quickly, hugging it against her chest. Her eyes darted to the door as if afraid someone might burst in. The mechanic watched her carefully. "What is it?" he asked. His voice was calm but steady, like he already knew she was hiding something. She shook her head. "It's just a toy," she said quickly, too quickly. But her trembling voice betrayed her. The toy hummed louder, as if it was telling a truth she wanted to keep buried. The man leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms. He did not push her, but his eyes did not leave hers. He simply said, "No machine sings like this without a reason." Her breath caught in her throat. Tears welled up again, but these were not the same as before. These were heavy with fear. She clutched the toy tighter and whispered, "It's not just a toy, it's a key." The mechanic straightened slowly, his eyes narrowing. "A key to what?" She shook her head again, her whole body trembling. "If they know, they'll come for me." He leaned forward now, his voice low but firm. "Who?" Her lips quivered. She opened her mouth, then shut it again, fighting inside herself. At last she whispered, "My people, my clan. They abandoned me because of this. They said it would bring danger. They left me here to hide, to disappear." The mechanic's jaw tightened. He looked at the glowing toy again. The symbols shifted like living light across its surface. He could feel the energy radiating from it, almost alive. He thought about what it meant. If this was technology her people feared, then it was no ordinary machine. The girl sobbed softly, clutching the toy so tightly her knuckles turned pale. "It's the only thing I have left of my parents. They told me to keep it safe, but I don't even know why. I only know it must never fall into the wrong hands." The mechanic's mind raced. He had fixed engines, ships, weapons, even machines from worlds no human should have touched. But this was different. He had the sudden chilling thought that the toy might be older than both their species. Something hidden, something worth killing for. A sound outside the workshop made them both jump. Voices, faint but sharp, carried through the metal walls. The mechanic stood quickly, moving to the window. His eyes scanned the shadows. Alien guards in dark armor were passing by, their sharp weapons glowing faintly. Their eyes swept the junkyard carefully. The girl froze, holding her breath, fear written all over her face. She whispered, "They're looking for me." The mechanic's pulse quickened. He turned back to her. "Because of the toy?" She nodded, too afraid to speak. The man moved quickly. He grabbed an old blanket and covered the toy's glow. He guided her gently but firmly toward the back of the workshop. "Stay quiet," he whispered. The girl's hands shook as she clutched the hidden toy to her chest. Her whole body felt cold, but when she looked at him, she saw no fear in his eyes, only determination. He crouched by the door, listening as the voices grew louder outside. The guards stopped near the workshop. Their footsteps were heavy, their shadows stretching long across the dusty floor. One of them barked something in their language. Another responded, pointing toward the building. The girl's heart nearly stopped. She pressed herself against the wall, her breath shallow, praying they would not come in. But then a heavy knock shook the door. The mechanic stayed still, his hand tightening around a wrench on the table. He motioned for her not to move, not to make a sound. The knock came again, louder this time. Then a voice called out, harsh and demanding. The girl buried her face against her knees, tears streaming down silently. She could almost hear her parents' voices warning her. Never let them find it. Never let them take you. The mechanic's eyes flickered toward her, then back at the door. He whispered under his breath, so low she barely heard. "As long as I'm here, they won't." Minutes passed like hours. Finally, the footsteps faded, the voices moving farther into the junkyard. The tension in the room loosened, but only slightly. The girl lifted her head, still shaking. Her eyes filled with both fear and relief. The mechanic sat back, exhaling slowly. He looked at her and said firmly, "You can't stay here anymore. They will keep coming." Her lips trembled. "But where can I go?" He looked at the blanket covering the glowing toy. His face hardened with resolve. "Wherever it is, you won't go alone." The girl's tears fell again, but this time they carried something different. For the first time since her people abandoned her, someone had chosen to stand with her. She looked at the man who had fixed her toy, who had shielded her from shame and now from hunters. And she whispered, almost too soft to hear, "Why are you helping me?" The mechanic's eyes did not leave hers. Because some things are too important to abandon. The toy hummed under the blanket, its glow pulsing like a heartbeat, as if agreeing with him. The girl pressed it close, her fear mixing with hope. She realized then that the human mechanic was no longer just the man who fixed her toy. He was the only one standing between her and the danger that hunted her. And for the first time in her young life, she believed she might survive. The night air in the junkyard was heavy with silence, broken only by the distant clatter of machines and the growl of engines. The girl sat close to the mechanic inside his workshop, her toy hidden under layers of cloth. The glowing symbols had faded, but the memory of the guards outside still pressed on her mind. She kept glancing at the door, afraid it would burst open any moment. The mechanic noticed her shaking hands. He bent down and said in a low, steady voice, "They won't get you, not while I'm here." His words gave her some comfort, but she could not shake the fear. She whispered back, "They won't stop, they will keep looking." He nodded, his eyes hard. "Then we need to stay ahead of them." He began packing a small bag with tools, wires, and strange pieces of scrap. She watched him, her chest tight. "You're leaving?" she asked quickly. He paused and looked at her. "We are leaving." Her eyes widened. She had expected him to send her away, not take her with him. Her lips parted, but no words came. She could only stare as he strapped the bag to his back. He glanced at her again. "Can you walk?" She nodded shakily. Her legs felt weak, but she pushed herself up. The toy's faint hum vibrated through the cloth, and she held it close against her chest. She whispered, "Where will we go?" The mechanic opened the back door, scanning the shadows. "Somewhere they won't find us." But the night was not quiet for long. A sound echoed across the junkyard, heavy boots crunching on gravel, weapons clanging against armor. The girl froze. Voices shouted orders in the alien tongue, and beams of light cut through the piles of scrap. They were searching, and they were close. The mechanic grabbed her hand, pulling her into the shadows. "Stay low," he whispered. They slipped between heaps of broken machines, the sharp metal edges cutting into their path. The girl's heart pounded so loudly she thought the guards would hear it. A shout rang out behind them. "There, by the workshop!" The girl gasped, and the mechanic pulled her faster. Lights flashed across the junkyard as the guards ran toward the workshop they had just left. He pushed her down behind a rusted ship hull. They crouched in the darkness as footsteps thundered past. The guards kicked the workshop door open. The crash echoed, followed by angry shouts when they found nothing inside. The girl pressed her toy tighter to her chest. She whispered, "They know." The mechanic placed a hand on her shoulder, steadying her. His eyes were sharp, calculating. "Then we keep moving." They crawled through the junkyard, keeping low, their bodies brushing against sharp scraps and rusted wires. The smell of oil and smoke filled their noses. Every time the lights swept close, they froze, holding their breath until the danger passed. At last, they reached the edge of the junkyard. But as they tried to slip out, another group of guards appeared, blocking the way. Their tall figures loomed, their armor glowing faintly in the dark. One of them barked something, pointing directly at the girl. Her chest tightened. They had seen her. The mechanic cursed under his breath, pulling her back into cover. His mind raced. The guards were spreading out, closing in from every side. Escape was slipping away, the girl's eyes filled with tears, her voice trembling. "They'll take me. I know it. They'll take me away." The mechanic grabbed her chin gently but firmly, forcing her to look at him. His eyes burned with determination. "Not while I breathe." She stared at him, her fear battling with a new feeling rising in her chest. Trust. The guards began tearing through the piles of scrap, their weapons raised. The sound of metal crashing echoed around them. The mechanic's grip tightened on the wrench hanging from his belt. He pulled her close. "When I tell you to run, you run. Don't stop. Don't look back." She shook her head quickly, panic in her eyes. "No, I won't leave you." He leaned closer, his voice low and fierce. "If you stay, neither of us makes it out. Trust me." The girl's tears streamed down, but she nodded slowly. She held the toy tightly, feeling its faint hum as if it too was alive with fear. The mechanic stood tall from their hiding spot. Sparks of courage seemed to burn off him. He pressed a small button on the device strapped to his wrist. Around them, old machines hidden in the junkyard roared to life. Engines coughed, metal arms swung, sparks flew. The guards shouted in alarm as the dead junk suddenly moved. The girl's eyes widened in shock. She had thought those piles were nothing but trash, but the mechanic had turned them into weapons. His machines groaned forward, blocking the guard's path with heavy limbs. Sparks lit the night like fireworks. "Now!" he shouted. The girl ran, her small legs carrying her as fast as she could. The ground shook under the clash of metal and armor behind her. She heard the guards shouting, weapons firing, machines smashing into them. She wanted to look back, but his words echoed in her ears. "Don't stop. Don't look back." She darted between wreckage, her toy clutched tight, her breath ragged. The sound of battle filled the junkyard, the clash of machines, the shouts of soldiers, the roar of engines. She stumbled but pushed forward, driven by his voice in her head. Then she heard him shout again, far behind her. A cry of anger, strong and defiant. Her chest ached. She wanted to turn back, to run to him, but her legs carried her onward. She slipped into the shadows of an old ship hull and collapsed, gasping for air. Tears streaked her cheeks, but she forced herself to stay quiet. She hugged the toy close, whispering, "Please be safe. Please." The battle raged in the distance. Sparks lit the night sky, shadows twisting across the junkyard walls. She closed her eyes, praying he would come back through the smoke. Minutes dragged like hours. Then, footsteps, slow, heavy, coming closer. Her heart pounded. She pressed herself against the cold metal, holding her breath. The steps stopped. Then a hand reached out of the smoke, rough, scarred, but familiar. Her eyes widened, and she let out a sob of relief. The mechanic emerged, his clothes torn, his face streaked with dirt and sweat, but his eyes still steady. He crouched beside her, breathing hard. "Told you," he said softly, "I'd never let them take you." The girl threw her arms around him, clutching the toy between them. For the first time, she felt safe, even with danger still close. Behind them, the junkyard smoldered with smoke and sparks, but they had survived, together. The junkyard was quiet again, but it was the kind of quiet that comes after chaos, heavy and sharp. Smoke curled up from broken machines, and the faint glow of sparks still lit the night in small flashes. The girl clung to the mechanic's side. Her toy pressed against her chest, its hum weak but steady. She could still hear the angry shouts of the guards fading into the distance, but she knew they would return. They would not give up so easily. The mechanic led her back toward the workshop, his steps uneven from exhaustion. His clothes were torn, his arm bleeding from a cut he had not even noticed. But his eyes were still burning with the same fire as before. The girl looked up at him, her throat tight. "You fought them," she whispered, her voice trembling. "You stood against them all." He gave a tired smile, but said nothing. He pushed open the workshop door and guided her inside. The room smelled of oil and smoke, the lamp flickering weakly above the table. He closed the door behind them and locked it with a heavy bar. For now, they were safe, but both knew it would not last long. The girl sat on the stool, holding the toy. Its symbols glowed faintly through the cloth. She stared at it, her hands shaking. "They'll keep coming," she said softly. "They'll never stop until they have it. Until they have me." The mechanic washed the dirt from his hands, his back to her. "Then we won't let them." His tone was flat, as if it were the simplest answer in the world. She blinked at him, her heart pounding. "But why? Why risk everything for me? I'm just..." He turned suddenly, his eyes sharp. "You're not just anything. You matter." His voice was firm, almost angry, but not at her. Angry at the world that had made her believe otherwise. The girl's lips trembled. No one had ever said that to her before. He sat down at the table, pulling the toy toward him again. He opened its back carefully, revealing the glowing core inside. "This isn't just a toy. It's technology even I don't fully understand. Whatever it's hiding, it's dangerous to the wrong hands. But to you, it's more than that. It's part of who you are." The girl lowered her eyes, tears threatening to fall. "It's all I have left of them." The mechanic's voice softened. "Then we protect it. Together." The girl looked up, her tears spilling, but this time they carried hope. She nodded slowly, clutching the toy when he handed it back. The hum seemed stronger now, as if it understood his words. Suddenly, a loud crash shook the workshop. The girl gasped, clutching the toy tightly. The mechanic stood at once, grabbing the wrench from his belt. Another crash followed, closer this time. The guards had returned. The girl's breath quickened. "They found us!" The mechanic's eyes darted to the door, then the window. His mind raced. "We can't run this time," he muttered. "Not yet." The door shuddered under a heavy blow. Dust fell from the ceiling. The girl whimpered, backing into the corner. The mechanic moved quickly, pulling a lever on the wall. Around the room, hidden panels clicked open. Machines he had built in silence now came alive, metal arms, gears, and engines roaring. The small workshop shook with the sound of his creations. The girl stared in awe. She had thought the workshop was just filled with junk and scraps. But he had been preparing, building, ready for a fight he knew would come. The door burst open, and the first guard stepped inside, his weapon raised. But before he could move, one of the mechanic's machines swung forward, a heavy arm smashing into him and sending him crashing against the wall. Sparks flew, smoke filled the air, and the battle began. The girl pressed herself into the corner, hugging the toy as the workshop exploded into chaos. Guards poured in, shouting, their weapons glowing. The mechanic fought beside his machines, his wrench in his hand, his movements quick and fierce. He blocked a strike, swung his wrench hard, and sparks lit the air as metal clashed with metal. The girl's heart pounded as she watched him stand against them all. He was only one human, yet he fought with a strength she had never seen before. Every swing of his wrench, every roar of his machines sent fear into the guards who had once laughed at humans. But there were too many. The machines groaned under the pressure, sparks flying as weapons sliced into their metal frames. The mechanic gritted his teeth, his arms shaking with exhaustion. The girl could see it. He was pushing himself past his limits. Tears blurred her vision. "Stop!" she cried out. "They'll kill you!" He turned his head just long enough to meet her eyes. His voice cut through the chaos. "As long as you're safe, it's worth it." Her chest ached. She wanted to run to him, to help, but her body froze in fear. She could only clutch the toy tighter, its glow pulsing faster, almost in rhythm with her racing heart. One guard broke past the machines, his weapon raised toward her. The girl gasped, backing away. The mechanic's eyes widened. He roared, throwing himself forward, tackling the guard before the weapon could fire. They crashed against the table, sending tools scattering. The toy slipped from her hands, landing on the ground with a sharp clink. The glowing symbols flared to life, brighter than ever before. The hum grew into a deep vibration that shook the floor. Everyone froze for a moment, staring at the toy as its light filled the workshop. The girl's breath caught in her throat. The toy was awake, fully alive, as if responding to her fear and his protection. The guards shouted in panic, their eyes wide. They began retreating, their weapons shaking in their hands. The mechanic stood slowly, his chest heaving, his face covered in sweat and dirt. He glanced at the glowing toy, then at the girl. She ran forward, scooping it up into her arms. Its glow bathed her face in golden light. She whispered, "It's protecting us." The mechanic nodded slowly, his grip tightening on his wrench. "Then we protect it back." The guards, frightened by what they had seen, pulled away from the workshop. Their voices echoed as they fled into the night, leaving only smoke and silence behind. The girl stood shaking, her toy glowing warmly against her chest. She turned to the mechanic, her tears falling again, but now they were mixed with awe. "You saved me again." He wiped the sweat from his brow, his breathing heavy. "No," he said softly, "we saved each other." The toy's glow dimmed to a gentle light, its hum steady like a heartbeat. The girl pressed it close and looked at the mechanic with new eyes. He was no longer just the man who fixed her toy. He was her shield, her family, and her hope in a world that had tried to leave her broken. And for the first time, she began to believe that maybe they could win against whatever was coming next. The smoke cleared slowly, drifting out of the broken workshop door and vanishing into the night air. The girl stood in the middle of the room, her toy glowing softly in her hands. Her cheeks were wet with tears, but she was not crying anymore. She was staring at the light, as if it was proof that hope had finally returned to her life. The mechanic sat slumped against the wall, his chest rising and falling heavily. His clothes were torn, his arms bruised, and cuts ran along his skin. But his eyes were still steady. Even in exhaustion, there was no fear in them. The girl ran to him, dropping to her knees. "You're hurt," she whispered. He waved it off with a tired smile. "I've been worse." His voice was rough but calm, as if pain meant nothing to him. She shook her head, pressing the toy against her chest again. "You fought them all. They'll come back. They won't stop." The mechanic's eyes flickered toward the toy. The glow of its strange symbols reflected in his tired face. "Let them come," he said quietly. We'll be ready." The girl's lips trembled. She wanted to argue, to say they could never win against so many, but when she looked at him, the words died. He had stood against them before, with nothing but his hands, his machines, and his will. If anyone could keep her safe, it was him. Outside, the junkyard lay in silence. The other children who had once mocked her now peeked from behind piles of scrap. They had seen the battle. They had seen the guards retreat in fear, and they had seen the toy, glowing like something out of legend, in the arms of the small girl they used to laugh at. None of them spoke. None of them dared. The girl held the toy closer, feeling its hum against her heart. She whispered, "They were wrong about you." The mechanic raised an eyebrow. "Who?" She smiled faintly through her tears. "Everyone. They said humans were weak, useless. But you fixed it. You fixed me." Her voice cracked at the last words, and she quickly wiped her eyes. For a long moment, the mechanic said nothing. Then he reached out, his hand rough and scarred, and rested it lightly on her shoulder. "Maybe we both needed fixing," he said. The girl laughed softly, a fragile laugh but real. She leaned against him, the toy glowing between them like a small sun. Time passed, and the night grew quieter. But deep down, both of them knew it was not over. The guards would return with more men, more weapons. The girl's people would not give up so easily on what they had abandoned. The toy was not just a memory anymore. It was something greater, something powerful, and the mechanic knew it. He stood slowly, pushing himself off the wall despite the pain. "We can't stay here. The workshop, the junkyard, it's not safe anymore." The girl looked up at him, her eyes wide. "Where will we go?" He looked toward the horizon, where the faint glow of dawn was starting to push away the night. "Somewhere they won't expect. Somewhere we can build, not just hide." The girl hugged the toy tightly, her fear mixing with hope. She nodded, trusting him completely. As the first light of morning touched the junkyard, the other children finally stepped out of hiding. They stared at the mechanic and the girl with wide, uncertain eyes. One of them whispered, "Is it true? A human did all that?" The girl straightened, clutching her toy. Her voice, though small, was firm. "He did, and he's the reason we're still alive." The mechanic glanced at her, then at the children. He did not speak, but his silence was louder than words. The children lowered their eyes, no longer mocking, no longer laughing. The girl turned back to the mechanic. "What if they follow us?" He tightened the strap on his tool bag, his face set with determination. "Then we make them regret it." The girl felt a shiver, but not a fear. It was strength. She believed him, every word. She pressed the toy close to her chest, its glow steady, as if it too trusted him. They left the junkyard together. The mechanic walking ahead with steady steps, the girl close behind, her toy lighting their path. The world beyond was dangerous, filled with enemies and unknown trials, but for the first time, she was not afraid of what was coming. As they reached the edge of the junkyard, the mechanic stopped and looked back one last time. Smoke still rose from the ruins of the battle, the machines he had built lying broken but victorious. He took a deep breath, then turned forward again. The girl whispered, "Wherever we go, will it be safe?" He looked down at her, his voice quiet but certain. "It will be safe because we'll make it safe." She nodded, her small hand gripping the edge of his worn jacket. Together, they stepped into the unknown. Behind them, whispers spread like fire. A human had stood against the alien guards. A human had turned junk into weapons. A human had protected what others had thrown away. And now, a human and an abandoned alien child were walking into the future, side by side. The girl held her toy high for a moment. Its glow bathed her face in light, shining against the morning sun. She smiled softly, whispering, "They'll never take this away." The mechanic glanced at her, his lips curling into the faintest of smiles. He didn't need to say anything. The bond between them was already unbreakable. And so they walked on, leaving the junkyard behind, carrying with them more than a toy, more than a secret. They carried a new beginning, one built not from fear, but from trust, courage, and the promise that no matter what came, they would face it together.